Good morning. Good to see everybody here this morning. Do we have any prayer requests that anything we need to pray about this morning before we get started? Yes.
Stephen's grandmother's in the hospital. And his mom's flying out today. Texas.
Sorry, who's flying out?
His mom's flying out today.
Oh, okay.
I found out my friend Nays died 2 Thursdays ago, and his wife Arliss had surgery, and the first one went well, but that was before he died. And then afterwards, she had a second. She's not really well with that one, so.
Okay.
Everyone has their baby, and they'll, people will be taking their meals, you can send them for helping on the meals.
Good.
Lots of thanks for delivery.
Yes. It's exciting.
I would just like to ask for my mom, Charlene. She had surgery this week on her foot. This is kind of the first big thing where she needs help that she's had to deal with since my dad passed away. So it's been kind of emotional, and she needs the help, but she's a little skeptical about it. So just be very grateful.
Absolutely. Anything else? If not, let's go ahead and start with a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we are so grateful to be here this morning and to be here to learn about your word and to worship you in a way that is pleasing in your sight. And Lord, at this time, there's people on our hearts and minds. Lord, I ask that you would be with Stephen's grandmother, Lord, and just be with her as she is going through a trying time with her health, and just put your healing hand upon her. And also be with Stephen's mom as she's flying, to be with her and keep her safe on her travels, and bring peace to the family. I ask that you be with May's family and just put your hand of comfort upon them, Lord, as they go through this difficult and trying time. Lord, I asked for healing for Charlene's foot as she has recently gone through surgery, and I asked that your healing hand would be upon that situation, and that she'd be able to get up and about as she used to soon. We have a prayer of thanks for Aurora's delivery and the miracle of life that you've given to her, and thank you for that going so smoothly, and we thank you at this time for this time that we have to spend time learning about your word. Thank you for the sunshine that we have this morning that reminds us of your love. In Jesus' name, amen. So this morning we're going to be in 1 Kings chapter 5. Continuing our study of Kings. We can go ahead and read the chapter and then we'll go back through it. And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants unto Solomon. For he had heard that they had anointed him king in the room of his father. For Hiram was ever a lover of David. And Solomon sent to Hiram, saying, Thou knowest how that David my father could not build a house unto the name of the Lord his God, for the wars which were about him on every side, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God hath given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurrent. And behold, I purpose to build a house unto the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spake unto David my father, saying, Thy son, whom I will set upon thy throne in thy room, he shall build a house unto my name. Now therefore command that they may hew me cedar trees out of Lebanon, and my servants shall be with the servants, and unto thee will I give hire for thy servants according to all that thou hast appointed. For thou knowest that there is not among us any that can skill to hew timber like unto the Sidonians. And it came to pass, when Hiram heard the words of Solomon, that he rejoiced greatly, and said, Blessed be the Lord this day, which hath given unto David a wise son over his great people. And Hiram sent to Solomon, saying, I have considered the things which thou hast sent for me. I will do all that thou desires, timber of cedar, and concerning timber of fir. My servants shall bring them down from Lebanon unto the sea, and I will convey them by sea and floating unto the place that thou shalt appoint me. And will cause them to be discharged there. And thou shalt receive them, and thou shalt accomplish my desire in giving food for my household. So Hiram gave Solomon cedar trees and trees according to all his desire. And Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 measures of wheat for food to his household, and 20 measures of pure oil. Thus gave Solomon to Hiram year by year. And the Lord gave Solomon wisdom, as he promised him. There was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they two made a league together. And King Solomon raised a levy out of all the people, and the levy was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month by courses. A month they were in Lebanon, and 2 months at home. And Adoniram was over the levy. And Solomon had 70,010 that bare burdens, and 80,000 hewers in the mountains. Beside the chief of Solomon's officers, which were over the work, 3,300 which ruled over the people that wrought in the work. And the king commanded, and they brought great stones, costly stones, and huge stones, to lay the foundation of the house. And Solomon builders and Hiram's builders did hew them, and the stone squares, so they prepared timber and stones to build the house. So if anyone has comments as we go through, just speak up and let me know, and we'll hopefully have some good discussion. I don't have a lot of questions. Solomon, at this point, chapter 5, has established himself as a wise ruler over Israel, and certainly earned the respect of the people at this point, and has furthered the prosperity of God's people. And he's asked God for wisdom above anything else, and the Lord is blessing him because of this. So in chapter 5, it's going to take us into the beginning stages of the temple, of the building process of building the temple of the Lord. And David, of course, David wanted to build a temple. He desired to build a temple, but that's not what the Lord desired for him to do, because of the blood that he had on his hand, because of the man of war that he was. So verse 1 here, and Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants unto Solomon, for he had heard that they had anointed him king in the room of his father. for Hiram was ever a lover of David. So Hiram, king of Tyre, has heard about Solomon's reign. He's opened up some form of communication with him at this point, sent a messenger with a letter of some kind, and it appears that this is because of a previous relationship or alliance that David had with Hiram. And there's actually some archaeological evidence that suggests that Hiram's name is actually Ahiram, and that Hiram is actually like a shorter name for him given by his closer friends or associates. So there's some form it's an indication that there's some form of a previous relationship here, that they're more than just random rulers of countries, This also would seem to point towards David's diplomatic side. David obviously had dealings with Hiram in the past, and they were allies essentially of some form. David was a man of war out of necessity to establish his kingdom, and Saul, of course, was the first king of Israel. But even during Saul's reign, David was the warrior. He was fighting the Lord's battles on the front lines, and achieved great results. The point is, David was a mighty man of war, fighting off the enemies of Israel continually. But again, in this passage, we do get a glimpse of David's other side, where he's not just a man of war fighting off every nation around him. He's got another side to him where he's very wise in the fact that he's bringing in other countries that are close by to make alliances. and Solomon ultimately will benefit from David's previous relationship here, as he strives to build the temple. So in verse 2, and Solomon went to Hiram, saying, "Thou knowest how that David my father could not build a house unto the name of the Lord his God for the wars which were about him on every side, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet." So as we know, David was a man of war and therefore unable to build the temple. It's interesting that Solomon talks to Hiram in a way that suggests his familiarity with the Lord. So Hiram is obviously a man of some familiarity with the faith, and they talk on a term as if they've know this about each other previously, that they both respect the God of Israel. Let's go ahead and turn over to 1 Chronicles 22, verses 7 through 8. And David said to Solomon, "My son, as for me, it was in my mind to build a house unto the name of the Lord my God. But the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Thou hast shed blood abundantly, hast made great wars, and thou shalt not build a house unto my name, because thou hast shed much blood upon the earth in sight." So again, that is just a passage David's telling Solomon, this is your task. I would love to do this, but it's not for me. This is for you. So moving on to verse 4. But now the Lord my God hath given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurrent. So there's now peace in Israel after much fighting, strife. There's now peace, and interesting because here the word translated for adversary can also be translated to mean literally Satan. So take that for what it's worth. Verse 5. Behold, I propose to build a house unto the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spake unto David my father, saying, Thy son, whom I will set upon thy throne in thy room, he shall build a house unto my name. So we see Solomon is now taking responsibility for the building project. He has a passion for the Lord's work. Of course, Solomon isn't just building the temple for the Lord's name. He is building it for a living God. However, this is possibly an example here of the Israelites not using the Lord's name frequently, as we see bottom of verse 5. He doesn't call them out by name. He says, "He shall build a house unto my name," and he doesn't specify that. And that's possibly just an example of the holiness that was associated with Jehovah, the name of Jehovah. Verse 6, "Now therefore command thou that they may make me cedar trees out of Lebanon, and my servants shall be with thy servants, and unto thee will I give hire for thy servants according to all that thou shalt appoint. For thou knowest that there is not among us any that can skill to hew timbers like unto the Sidonians." So right here we get to the meat of the issue. Hiram has materials that Solomon needs for building a temple. The Sidonians are known for their work with wood, and this is substantiated on a famous Palmyra stone, which is was inscribed about 2200 BC, and it tells us that timber. So, and that stone kind of lets us know about the skill of the Sidonians with wood, I guess. So this tells us that the timber would be carried by ships sailed from Byblos to Egypt about so this is about, so at the date of the writing, it's 400 years after the event. So it's speaking 400 years in the past about what happened. So the skill of the Sidonians were noted in their ability to pick the most suitable trees, know the right time to cut, and properly treat the logs so that they would be of the most value and use in something of this magnitude of a project. Solomon at this point is getting most likely the best help in the world at that time in order to ensure that the temple is built properly. So he's done his homework, and he's not cheaping out. And interestingly, he doesn't seem to care that the Gentiles will be helping on the construction at all. The tabernacle seems to be built by the Israelites alone, but on the construction of the temple, it seems that, as we'll learn later, there's just probably more Gentiles working than Jews on the temple. So in verse 7, "And it came to pass when Hiram heard the words of Solomon that he rejoiced greatly and said, Blessed be the Lord this day, which hath given unto David a wise son over his great people." So now Hiram is sending back to Solomon a blessing upon his God. And this further suggests that Hiram is at least in some way familiar with the God of Israel, and that possibly he has a relationship with God himself. We don't know that, but from this text, it suggests that there's some form of a relationship there that he's familiar with. Verse 8, "And Hiram sent to Solomon, saying, I have considered the things which thou sendest to me, and I will do all that you desire concerning timber of cedar and concerning timber of fir." And so Hiram is agreeing to supply wood for the temple, the wood of cedar and of fir at this point. So verse 9, "My servants shall bring them down from Lebanon unto the sea, and I will convey them by sea and floating to the place that thou shalt appoint me, and will cause them to be discharged there. And thou shalt receive them, and thou shalt accomplish my desire in good food for my household." So Hiram agrees to meet Solomon's request, largely it seems because of his previous relationship with David and now his relationship with Solomon. And however, this is not just a friendly gesture. This isn't just oh, I'll give you all this stuff here. This is there's a trade going on. There's materials changing hands here. So yeah, as we see, Hiram is going to be supplying the wood, and Solomon is going to be supplying food for Hiram's house. And even though they are on friendly terms, and Hiram at least respects God of Israel, this is still a business transaction. There's still a trade going on here, material for material. Verse 10. So Hiram gave Solomon cedar trees and fir trees according to all his desire. 11. And Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 measures of wheat for food to his household, and 20 measures of pure oil. Thus gave Solomon to Hiram year by year. This is a substantial amount of food in order to feed likely all of King Hiram's courts or house. Apparently, this, as we learned, this was given every year, possibly for the life of Hiram or just the duration of the project. I don't know. But this is not a one-time trade. This is a continual, ongoing thing between them. Verse 12. And the Lord gave Solomon wisdom as he promised him, and there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they two made a league together. So the Lord is pleased with Solomon's work and continues to bless him in all things, especially wisdom. And Solomon has now made a league or alliance with Hiram, probably much like his father David did. And verse 13. And King Solomon raised a levy out of all Israel, and the levy was 30,000 men. So Solomon apparently is raising an army of workers for construction for the temple. And we can already see the difference in tasks between David and Solomon and the tasks that they have as kings and leaders. David rose up armies of war to defend the nation and to conquer and to do the Lord's work. And Solomon, on the other hand, has become much more of a domestic king, where he's a little more relaxed, but he's building up the kingdom financially. He's building the temple of the Lord. So it's a little more of both important aspects of the nations of Israel's history, but very different tasks. So verse 14. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month by courses. A month they were in Lebanon, and 2 months at home. And Adoniram was over the levy. So already, possibly earliest shift work recorded. 1 month on to work, 2 months off. Pretty good rotation, right? Pretty good rotation. So obviously they still had some time at home to take care of their fields and families and stuff. So verse 15. And Solomon had 70,010 to bear burdens, and 80,000 hewers in the mountains. So Solomon had 70,000 men who bore burdens and 80,000 who quarried stone. So since these numbers are much larger than the men working on the temple who are Israelites, I assume these men must be from different countries, either hired or slave labor from countries that were conquered. Verse 16. Beside the chief of Solomon's officers, which were over the work, 3,300 which ruled over the people that brought in the work. So besides the men that are working on the temple, we have 3,300 men that are overseeing the work, on-the-job foremen, working foremen that are making sure everything goes smoothly in the construction of the temple. So doesn't say, but likely that these men are also on some form of shift, 1,100 a month, working at any given time on one project. That's just the bosses. So it's quite a substantial amount of people, and everything went smoothly, I guess. So with 1,100 bosses on site, so it's pretty impressive. Verse 17. And the king commanded, and they brought great stones, costly stones, and huge stones to lay foundation of the house. So these stones for the foundation, it is telling us that these are not just ordinary stones taken from anywhere. They are of a substantial value. This is speaking to Solomon's character at this point. He is not looking to save money by cheaping out on the foundation stones that are never going to be seen. You know, they're going to be under everything else. He's spending money right from the start. He is putting a value on this project. It's not like he's only putting money on the superficial things that you can see on the outside, you know. But right from the beginning, he's using the highest quality materials that he's putting in the ground right from the start. So it speaks to his character and his intent with this project, that his heart is in this project. He's not just going through the motions here. And this can speak to us too. You know, as Solomon is doing, we can do too. We're not supposed to be worried about the superficial, you know, what things look like on the outside, but to be concerned about the important things that nobody sees, you know, behind the scenes, you know, our own personal relationship with Jesus Christ. You know, obviously something that's not always out in the open. You know, sometimes we can hide that part of ourselves for a time if we're not spending the time we need to be in the Word and studying. And but Solomon is setting that example to make that a priority. The things that are unseen, making that a priority in his life. And verse 18. And Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders did hew them, and the stones squares. So they prepared timber and stones to build the house. So Solomon and Hiram's builders are working on this project together. So further strengthening their alliance, their bond together. So it's very very interesting, because we didn't see much of David taking that side of things where he's a diplomatic individual, but Solomon is now feeding off of that diplomacy that David did have, and just one of the ways that David helped to establish the temple. So Solomon doesn't waste any time in his reign. It seems he doesn't really procrastinate about building the temple. It's one of the first things he's doing as king. He's making a priority to start the construction. As we see in First Chronicles chapter 22 again, verse 9. Behold, verse 9. Behold, a son shall be born to thee, shall be a man of rest, and I will give him rest from all his enemies round about. For his name shall be Solomon, and I will give peace and quietness into Israel in his days. So once again, this is showing that Solomon is going to be a man of peace. He's going to be a man of building the temple, something that David couldn't do. And this is often known as Israel's golden years, when money was flowing throughout Israel freely, and became the most powerful nation. And you can look throughout history and see what these kind of circumstances kind of breed. You know, um, when you have peace and easy life, you know, it tends to, even though it can breed wealth, it also tends to breed weak men. You know, during Solomon's reign, Israel prospered beyond whatever it had ever before in the past, and this is because the Lord had blessed Solomon. Um, and but I do believe that this is one of the causes of Solomon being led astray. We know that he struggled with very worldly things. You know, he had numerous wives and concubines that were not in God's plan for him, and ended up leading him astray to into idol worship. Um, so it's very interesting that, and I feel like it's almost it's not a cause, but it almost is. You know, you have a man of peace that is just very concerned with the physical things right in front of him all the time, and he becomes weak spiritually, and ends up falling into some sin and not always following the Lord's plan for his life. Um, and this is opposed to his father David, who struggling continually in his life and in his reign. You know, a man of war. There's wars on every side of Israel throughout David's reign, and just a lot of different things that David dealt with that made him a stronger man, and made him the man after God's own heart. And I think the trials that David went through is probably a very good reason that David became the strong man that he was spiritually. Um, I mean, we look at America today, and we're very comfortable. You know, we're we're living pretty well, and have been for a long time. And I've said this to multiple people before, but I'm like, where are the strong men in America? You know, because we're comfortable, and I do believe that that breeds weak men. And but there's a cycle. You know, there's a cycle. So comfort, stability breeds weak men, and then you have trials. And strong men rise up out of trials. And we see that in Judges. We're going to see that in here in Kings in the future, and we're going to see a cycle of weak men, and hopefully some men that rise up and do the right thing and stand up for God and His kingdom. So that's all I have for this morning. So thank you for lending me your ear.